So this is going to be part of a series of recordings that I'm going to do about League of Legends 3v3. I'm Drona, and the team that I play for, an amateur, team of just players who are just doing it for fun, is Twisted Threes. And so in this game, I'm playing Kayle, and my friends are Sion and Renek, and I'll just briefly begin by talking about sort of what our goals are, our roles, and then the broader picture of sort of what's happening in the game. So just to set up, we are a mid-silver 3v3 team, so we are not, excellent players by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that the strategies that we use and the things that we think about are things that occur at many different levels of the game. And mainly this series of videos is just sort of to help me improve my own play by looking at sort of what we do and thinking about the way that the engages develop and how we can do things differently in the future. Okay, with that out of the way, the roles that we typically break down with is that Sion typically plays jungler, and Renekton typically plays top with me as the AP carry down in bottom lane. Now, most AP carries tend to start with double Dorans. Keeps them very safe from early ganks, from lane harass, with one pot. Now, at our level of play, again, at the mid-silver tier, I find that that's really not necessary. I don't need that extra health from the second Doran's ring, and can really manage with the mana regen from the first Doran's ring. And adding the boots puts me a little bit of the way towards my overall build without setting me too far back in lane. Now, the first thing I want to note is sort of my mechanics against Orianna. I'm not a great Kayle, but the first thing to sort of understand is that Kayle's really strong against Ori, and what I should be doing is positioning myself towards the back, towards the front of my creep line, and using my E to harass her out of lane, while I then use my basic auto attacks to just last hit minions. Instead, I'm relatively crudely pushing lane while missing a great number of last hits. This is, again, sort of my mechanical issues. Now, my lane partner, or the top laner rather, Renekton, has also pushed his Vayne back. Sort of just a demonstration of, the level of play that we're at, because, reasonably speaking, a ranged champion like Vayne, I don't expect should be able to should be pushed back that far, but our Renekton is quite good, so that plays to our advantage. And these players, if you sort of look at their builds, are quite bad. So Ori started a tier with some pots. I wouldn't really recommend starting tier with Orianna, especially on 3v3. I mean, in a 5v5 match where it'll end up going for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it might be acceptable. So in this engage, I moved up into the jungle because we had pushed our lane, and we try and establish a forward position and try and starve the enemy of essentially farm, both in lane and in the jungle. And so what we did right there is, once I pushed my lane, I went in with our jungler to try and harass their jungler, and we got the flash out of Malph. Then we tried to collapse onto Orianna, but we ended up taking a couple of tower shots. Again, we tried to get some harass done, but ended up taking some tower shots. And that's sort of what I mean in terms of just not the greatest mechanics that we have. But we have established exactly what our goals were, which is to push our lanes and set up sort of a forward line where we can starve their jungler and eventually their lanes out of experience and farm. After that failed series of harass, we're going back and just sort of seeing what else we can get done. I'm just going to speed through some of this as we farm through the game a little bit. Okay, so we get back in the lane, and I'm back in lane, down with Orianna. Renekton is farming away, and Sion, like I said, is establishing that forward position so that we can eventually continue to invade, threaten their altar, and get more objectives. so here we go. So exactly, so you can see that vertical line that we've established on the map where I'm pushing my lane and Sion is threatening their jungler. And so this allows us to now push onto their altar. Now, when they're on the altar, I'm setting up out of sight around the corner because I know Vayne is going to be arriving, and once she comes, I unleash my entire combo onto her. Now, because, again, the players are not very good, she doesn't notice me until it's likely very much too late for her. She condemns me into the wall, which is a good move on her part, but she isn't able to escape the subsequent Renek combo. Now, at this point, we have the altar, we've taken a kill, so now it's time for us to sort of consolidate our gains. We likely won't be able to chase down the Malphite and Orianna because they can run back to their tower and our creep wave is crashing in. So probably the most time effective thing for us to do right now is push top lane into their tower. And as you can see, there's a little bit of waffling before we realized that's what we need to be doing. If we had done that right away, we might have been able to get a little bit more damage onto the tower and consolidate some of our gains a little bit more effectively. Right now, Ori's pushing the bottom lane while we're at the tower, and Vayne, for some reason, steps really far out of position, allowing us to get the easy kill on her. And so we'll continue damaging the tower, and then so what Sion does is he Qs onto Malphite so that he can start taking tower damage. And then that allows Renek and I to dive in pretty deep to then secure the kill as Sion runs back. So that was really, really good play on his part. And awful positioning on the Malphite. So we'll then continue to work on this tower. You can see Orianna and Vayne collapsing, and that drives us away from the tower. Now I want to comment a little bit more as we sort of go through this farming stage on the builds that we're going towards. So my core items on Kayle are Stinger and Rublets. And typically in a 3v3 match, we won't actually get much further than those two items. I might be able to get a Haunting Guise plus, you know, or something else that's helpful. I try and go for some CDR aside from the Nashers at some point as well. So, and what my other two players are building towards is really the same sort of setup. So a Tiamat on both of them. So now we have their Malphite checking out our jungle, trying to set up, seeing if they can gank me. Now he's 5, so he doesn't have his ult, which means that I can pretty safely push into him. His build is also very, very incomplete, and you know, it's sort of inappropriate for what he's eventually going to be asked to do. In 3s, it's relatively inefficient to go, at least in my experience, a full tank, and especially at our skill level, because there are typically very few players that can solo carry a game such that you don't need to contribute any damage, and that's why you'll see my partners building a mixed sort of bruiser comp so that they can also contribute damage. So now Ori and Malphite have both their ults, so I'm staying very, very careful because I do not want to get caught in that combo. And so they've released both the ults onto Renek. It did almost no damage. And so immediately we focus on the weaker target, the Orianna. Unfortunately, she's able to shield and get away. I lose my focus a little bit and walk back when I should have been walking towards her. What we should have done now is then have Sion back out and then just leave the tower and sort of harass them from outside the edges of the tower. But unfortunately, we stayed under tower, continued tanking it, and that allowed them to get essentially a free kill and onto their Vayne of all people, which was bad. Now, I know that my burst damage is pretty high, but I didn't take into account the fact that Sion was so low and couldn't really contribute anything, and that I have no hard lockdown of my own. So I forced her heal, and with her combo, she does a lot of damage to me, and then Sion manages to scare her back, forcing out the flash. So that was good. But if she had been better, she would have likely just condemned me into the wall and killed me. So now we go back, continue to farm, and you can see Renekton clearing the top wave. So right now I can't see any of them, so I'm not 100% sure exactly where I should be positioning, and I just try and push my wave into their tower. Okay, so this is... Actually, I want to go back and take one more look at that, because that was a point at which I had really anticipated that we would be able to kill the Vayne. I'm not 100% sure why we did not. Okay, so my Righteous Fury is still up. Oh, that's why. So if you saw, I had one auto attack onto creeps because of a misclick. And so that's where it comes down to mechanics. A better player would not have made that mistake, and we would have been able to secure that Vayne kill right there, which likely would have allowed us to take this tower a little bit more freely. Although, frankly, we should be able to get it right now with Renekton being able to tank out all of the Ori damage. Okay. So, right now I want to talk a little bit again about Orianna. She's going to be very, very ineffective throughout the majority of the game because she has very little AP, and so right now she has a Chalice and a Tear that brings almost no AP to the table, and especially without anything on that Tear. So one of the things that our team does a lot, and the utility of it is a little bit questionable to me, is we try and harass people off of the altar to delay their capture. Now, in the cases where it allows us to pursue other objectives, like it did there, where Renekton was able to get the tower, I think it's very much worth it. But in the cases where you'll see further along during the course of this game, where we're just sort of sitting there, all of us, it might be of more value to continue farming elsewhere on the map rather than try and harass them off of the altar. Okay, so we get a little bit of damage down onto the tower. And here's where we make a first in a series of very, very big mistakes. So we continue pushing the lanes into their towers, which in many cases is definitely a good thing. But right now the map is entirely ours. We have 4K gold on them, and we have a number of levels, farm. We should be able to take whatever we want. And here we're going to be able to take the Malphite out, especially since we have the Sion ult. So bad mechanics showing in that ridiculous pathing that my character just took. So we have an enormous amount of map control, but we don't take advantage of it. What we do is we continue to funnel minions into their base, allowing them to farm up. Instead, what we should have done is freeze the lanes in mid-map, force them to come out of their base in order to take the minions, and then secure kills. Because we have frankly an excellent initiate in Sion, and just incredible damage in both Sion and Renekton. And so you'll see that we continue making that mistake, where we continue driving the waves into their towers almost pointlessly. But we do farm out a lot of their jungle, which is to our credit. So here we go back for items. And you see that their team is traveling as a group. So here was a point where we wanted to set up for a gank. So we tried to do the sort of strategy that I had just described, but then we mis-execute. So what we should have done is traveled as 3, and then Sion steps forward, but then pauses, and I believe at that point that Vayne had full sight of me, and if not, they're going to get pretty good sight of Sion into that minion wave. So again, some pathing issues for us that prevent us from getting off that gank. But anyway, at this point, what we really should have done is just continue taking their jungle, and then last hit the creep waves. I mean, it's frozen in the middle. There's really no reason for us, no incentive for us to push it into their base and provide them with free levels and experience, free levels and farm, excuse me. So, but, you know, because we are still learning the mechanics of this game, still learning how to play, we do exactly that. Again, to our credit, we try and split push a little bit, which theoretically should force out some uneven plays like it did there, forced out a flash, forced out the heal. But they've been very successfully avoiding engages such that they don't need to use those as summoners that often. So we get a little bit of damage onto the tower, and Renekton's pushing in. Now, this strategy where we push hard into the tower could work very, very well. Could work well if we had a comp that allowed us to capitalize on that. So if we had a Jace or a Nidalee, some sort of siege and poke, then pushing into the towers would have given us a strong advantage because we would have been able to poke them off of the tower while we were sitting under the tower. Okay, so now they're going to threaten their altar, and we're going to then initiate the fight. So here is where I make a pretty big mistake. So I walk straight into the Malphite, which then allows them to pull me into the Orianna ult. So we're able to get, oh man, pathing issues. It's just really embarrassing. We're able to get Malphite, but we lose me for it, which we didn't have to. And if I hadn't walked over the, but this is one of those situations where I don't know that we'll be. Eventually, they are going to be able to take the altar, and it might have been of greater value to us to just push their lanes and gain other objectives than deny them the altar. So now we go back to pushing the lanes, largely ineffectually, and then trying to farm out their jungle, which it really is was at this time our only sense of counterplay. So again, I try and set up onto the Vayne, she condemns me back, and manages to continue farming. So you can see that Vayne has farmed pretty successfully throughout this game at 148. Now being up against the wall right here was a big mistake by me, because it allows Vayne to condemn me, but luckily their poor play rewarded us, and we were able to clean up pretty well. Okay, and now with just Vayne poking us down, we are able to take the tower and then take the inhibitor as well. So Vayne has ulted, and then with the help of Orianna's ball, is then able to catch up with me. So that was a pretty big mistake. We still managed to get the inhibitor, which I think was well worth the death, but the second death was probably avoidable. But Renekton's goal at that point had been to attempt to clear Vayne off of me, but given my low health bar, it was unlikely that was going to be successful. Given all of our low health bars, it was more likely that she would triple kill us. Okay, so now that we've opened up one of the inhibitors, our goal is to now threaten this bottom altar. So getting caught in the double ult for us was really problematic, because it brought me really low, which left me open to being killed by one or two well-placed balls by Orianna. But I still think that I should have stayed in that fight longer and tried to do a little bit more damage to Malphite. I think the ult into the tower, especially after we had been double ulted, was probably inadvisable rather. But I was pretty far out of position during the start of that fight, and that happened to me at least twice during the course of this game, where I get caught for no reason in the Orianna ult. There was no reason. Well, actually, it's a third time it's about to occur as well. So then we continue farming. And again, this is a really bad position for me to be in. There's no reason for me to be that close to the wall. There, that open positioning is much better for my character, because I can make sure that I'm not going to get condemned into a wall. Okay, and this was a big mistake. So let's go back and analyze what we did right there. So here, for whatever reason, I didn't imagine that their ults would be back up, and I was so far out of position. So what we should have done instead is, let's speed this up just a little bit. So when we set up I think that we could have won a fight here, but we were split. So Renek was headed down into wolves. He had now aggroed wolves. I was really far out of position. There was just no conceivable reason for me to be where I was. And that flash was completely ineffectual. So we made some really odd plays. Then Sion ulted back into their team in an effort to try and disengage, but just so at this point, you know, we lost fights not on the strength of their characters, but just on the basis of our extremely weak positioning, and that was really problematic. So again, being up against the wall right there where I am is really bad, especially against a Vayne Malphite team, where Malphite could ult into me and then allow Vayne to follow up with a condemn. So now, the unfortunate thing is that this has given their Vayne confidence to then poke out and harass our team, which you know, changes obviously the playstyle. And again, you know, our big mistake is this. So here, Sion ults into them, but neither Renek nor I are able to follow up on that ult. So then they re-engage, but I know that Vayne is really the big issue, and so I focus her, knowing that my ult is up, but my team, growing concerned for me, then comes back into me and attempts to peel with Renek dying, and then now Sion dying as well. So probably the first error was engaging while they had Spider. That was probably something that we should have waited to just clear off.
Din of the dying.
But there was some concern over Vayne's growing power as an ADC. And one of the stronger hyper carries in the game. So this is really where the game ends for us, where so we're continuing to play our game, but and I'm pushing out bottom lane. But Sion, you know, very quickly and very astutely notices that Vayne is alone at top, so he immediately ults into her, and she, in a confusing manner, rolls backwards instead of away from his ult, which allows him to get a combo stun off, then allows Renek to then follow up. And with Vayne down, then for you know, a minute, we then have plenty of time to finish this game. So again, I was out of the double ult, which allowed me to then continue dealing damage to both of their team members. Now, while we finish up, if we look again at Orianna's build, that's why she's just not dealing very much damage. She has very little AP, has yet to build a single strong AP item. Athene's Unholy Grail is largely CDR and mana regen, not AP. And the Void Staff just is not enough. So they relied exclusively on Vayne to deal the damage, and that cost them the game. Okay, well, good game, and I'll be putting up more of these videos in the near future.